Have you ever paused in the middle of your hectic day and wondered why the words of Jesus, spoken more than 2,000 years ago, still manage to strike a chord in our hearts today? Some people say it's because, beyond the layers of religion, there's a timeless truth that resonates with our core human needs: hope, wisdom, strength, and a sense of belonging. Imagine you're in the thick of modern chaos, deadlines circling you like hawks, screens flashing with notifications, a swirl of social media debates pulling you one way, and personal obligations pulling you another. In this hectic reality, the teachings of Jesus aren't merely artifacts of history or distant dogmas. They're like a lifeline thrown into stormy waters. If you've felt that tide of confusion, or if you've longed for an anchor to steady you, you'll find that his words about faith, love, and inner transformation speak into the chaos with surprising clarity. This video is an invitation to rediscover those words, to sift through the noise and embrace the lasting principles that can turn life's storms into catalysts for growth. And right now, I want to invite you on a journey, one that doesn't demand some impossible ritual, but calls you to experience a living faith that moves mountains and a humble heart that opens doors to true greatness. With one of the most radical statements Jesus ever made: "The kingdom of God is near." There's something unbelievably poignant about those words in Mark 1:15. They're not about a faraway realm locked behind golden gates in the clouds. Instead, think of it as an ever-present reality, right here, weaving its way through families, friendships, workplaces, and our deepest personal struggles. He described a kingdom where power is found in servanthood and real freedom is discovered through forgiveness. Picture it. Every time bitterness melts into mercy, every time hatred gives way to love, that kingdom grows more tangible. But let's bring that closer to home. Have you ever had a relationship crumble under the strain of mistrust or grudges? Have you lost sleep over an offense you just can't let go? Jesus taught that the kingdom is not a concept for saints on stained glass windows. It starts in the messy corners of our hearts. Even a simple choice, like extending kindness to someone who wronged you, can become a spark that sets off a chain reaction of healing. It's an active force, pushing us beyond self-interest and into a relationship with God that reshapes our priorities. If you feel that gentle stirring, if there's a voice inside saying, "It's time to set down my burden of resentment and live differently," that may very well be the kingdom knocking at the door. The images Jesus gave us was faith the size of a mustard seed. In Matthew 17:20, he describes a scenario in which even a microscopic faith can move mountains. Of course, mountains here are not always literal rock formations. They're symbolic of the insurmountable obstacles we face. Perhaps for you, it's the crippling anxiety that flares every morning, a relationship that feels irreparably damaged, or a financial crisis that looms overhead like a dark cloud. The remarkable thing is that Jesus never demanded a colossal, flawless faith. He spoke of something small yet potent, urging us to trust that even a fragile yes to God can ignite something extraordinary. Think of it as planting that tiny seed. If you never water it, it remains just a speck, but nurture it. Take daily steps of trust. Pray when doubt creeps in, and feed your soul with uplifting truths, and it begins to grow. Faith isn't about denying reality. It's about seeing the magnitude of the problem, then boldly declaring, "My God is greater." Perhaps you've already had moments where you saw a glimmer of this truth. Maybe you prayed for a friend who was sick, or you asked for courage during a job interview, and you sensed a peace you couldn't explain. Those glimpses, as small as they are, hint at the miraculous potential within you. So why not push a little further? Faith isn't about having it all together. It's about saying, "I can't, but I trust that God can." It's illustrated these principles in parables, simple stories that transcend cultural barriers and centuries of interpretation. One of the most convicting is the parable of the two builders in Matthew 7:24-27, one who built on rock the other who built on sand. We've all seen storms, literal and metaphorical, that whip around us, testing the foundations we've chosen. Maybe your storm is a health scare that rattled your entire family, or betrayal at work that made you question your sense of worth. Storms bring out the truth of our foundation. If we've built on the rock, meaning we actively apply the teachings of Jesus, not just mentally agree with them, then even when the gusts of adversity come, we remain standing. But if our priorities revolve solely around material success, fleeting pleasures, or prideful pursuits, we might discover that our foundation crumbles the moment real pressure hits. Ask yourself, when storms come, and they will, what holds me steady? It's not about perfection or an immunity to pain. Rather, it's about establishing our lives on something unshakable, the goodness and grace of God, a relationship where we genuinely try to live out His words daily. Perhaps you think you've gone too far to rebuild, but that's never true. In moments of devastation, you can still choose to relocate to the rock, to let God guide the reconstruction of your life from the ground up. The most famous teachings of Jesus is the call to love God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. It's a simple-sounding command that is shockingly countercultural in a world fueled by division, outrage, and quick judgments. You might wonder, how am I supposed to love those who've hurt me or those who challenge me at every turn? Jesus took it even further, instructing us to love our enemies, to pray for those who persecute us. That might seem impossible, but think of the healing power that genuine love carries. I recall a friend who faced relentless criticism from a colleague. Instead of retaliating or backbiting, he chose empathy. He offered to help that colleague on a project. Over time, the walls of hostility began to crack, eventually revealing a shared sense of respect. Love isn't just a lofty idea. It's an active decision that can disarm hatred and transform relationships. And it's not just for external connections. You also have to love yourself rightly. Many of us carry regrets, insecurities, or guilt that make us harsh critics of our own souls. Loving ourselves as creations of God, acknowledging our worth, is crucial before we can effectively love others. This is the radical kingdom principle. Real love goes far beyond warm feelings. It's about sacrificial, intentional action, even if there's no promise of reciprocation. I shocked people with his emphasis on humility. In a culture, both ancient and modern, where pride is often celebrated and everyone rushes to claim credit, Jesus said, "Whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant." It's upside-down thinking for an upside-down kingdom, yet humility is liberating. No more endless wrestling matches to prove your importance, no more anxious comparison that leaves you drained. To illustrate humility in action, imagine yourself in a corporate environment where each person angles for the big promotion. It's cutthroat. Then you decide to step back and genuinely support your co-workers. Instead of hoarding information, you share resources. Instead of putting people down, you lift them up. It feels contradictory to everything you've been told about climbing ladders. But in that quiet posture of humility, you find an unexpected freedom, because your worth isn't tied to outshining others. Interestingly, true humility isn't about feeling worthless. It's about recognizing that real strength is found in gentleness. Jesus himself, with all the power of the universe at his disposal, washed the feet of his disciples in an act that rattled their assumptions. He could have demanded constant adoration, yet he chose service. That's the kind of leadership that endures. It's a leadership that transcends titles and sees people as individuals, not stepping stones. Without mentioning forgiveness. This topic alone could fill entire libraries, because forgiveness is fundamental to a life of freedom. You might be carrying wounds from a betrayal or harboring guilt over mistakes you can't erase. Jesus offered a stunning example of forgiveness while on the cross, asking forgiveness for those who were crucifying him. It defies logic to show mercy to those who cause you pain. However, forgiveness doesn't mean you pretend the pain never happened or that you condone injustice. It means releasing the bitterness that chains you to that pain. Think of it like this. Resentment is a prison cell that keeps you locked in with your worst memories. When you forgive, you're not letting the offender off the hook as much as you're letting yourself step into the fresh air of freedom. Sure, it might take time. Sometimes we forgive with trembling hearts, revisiting that choice day after day. But each time we do, the sting of bitterness loses its hold. Likewise, self-forgiveness is equally critical. Perhaps you've judged yourself so harshly that you've sidelined your dreams. It's time to see yourself the way God sees you. Forgiveness, in this sense, is a key that unlocks not only the door to healthier relationships, but also the door to the future you've been avoiding. Futures. Jesus taught us to stop worrying excessively about tomorrow and instead to seek first the kingdom of God. There's a liberating simplicity in those words. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. We spend so much time trying to secure our lives, building financial cushions, planning vacations, chasing success. None of that is inherently bad, but it can become an idol if we place our sense of security in our own ability to control. Meanwhile, Jesus points to the birds and wildflowers. They don't stress about daily needs, yet they thrive by God's provision. This isn't a call to laziness or passivity. On the contrary, it's an invitation to trust. Let's get practical. Maybe you're at a crossroads in your career. You're losing sleep, playing out worst-case scenarios. Seeking first the kingdom might look like pausing, bringing your fears to God, and realigning your priorities so that your career path doesn't devour your integrity or your relationships. It might mean being bold enough to reject a lucrative but morally questionable offer. Or it might mean stepping out in faith for an opportunity that seems risky, trusting God to guide you step by step. When you ground your decisions on kingdom values, love, honesty, service, you find that anxiety loosens its grip, and you discover a deeper sense of purpose than any paycheck could provide. These principles inevitably leads you to stand out from the crowd. It's no secret that a life anchored in kingdom values sometimes puts you in direct conflict with popular culture. You might have friends who tell you it's naive to forgive repeatedly or to remain humble when you could simply take advantage of people to get ahead. That's where courage comes in. Jesus never promised that following him would make you universally popular. He actually said the path is narrow and only a few find it. But here's the thing. By going against the current, by choosing compassion over revenge, humility over pride, and trust over fear, you shine as a beacon of hope in a world that's thirsty for authenticity. People notice when you respond differently to adversity, when you consistently choose honesty, or when you demonstrate compassion to the overlooked. Over time, that difference is what draws people in and sparks deeper conversations about faith and life's true meaning. That's how your personal journey can become a lifeline for others who are drowning in cynicism or despair. Teachings, faith like a mustard seed, building on the rock, loving without boundaries, practicing humility, extending forgiveness, and seeking first the kingdom, coalesce in what Jesus called the fullness of life. It's not about a trouble-free existence, but about an unshakable peace and joy that stand even when storms rage. Imagine waking up in the morning with a lightness in your heart, not because everything is perfect, but because you know you're not alone in your struggles. Picture handling conflict with grace rather than anger, or seeing trials as opportunities for growth instead of reasons to quit. That's the kingdom at work in real time. As you reflect on what you've heard, I want to encourage you to take a simple, courageous step. Open your heart. Maybe that means whispering an honest prayer, telling God your fears, your regrets, or your hopes. Maybe it means giving forgiveness a chance, or offering a small act of kindness to that difficult neighbor or co-worker. And if this message resonates, don't let it stop here. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that hope is still alive. Subscribe to this channel to keep receiving more content that uplifts your soul and fuels your faith. Drop a comment below telling us which teaching, whether it's humility, faith, or forgiveness, hits home for you the most. We'd love to hear your story, because each personal testimony adds a vibrant stitch to this tapestry of faith that we're weaving together. Remember, real change begins one small step at a time, and your step today might be the start of a brand new chapter.